ever so grateful for the way that Spirit shows up in life with Ophelia's reflection and Mark's reading this morning without any guidance aligning perfectly with the idea that we're talking about today of how to use it. And so we are at the final talk of our 4-week series from the first lessons in Science of Mind textbook. And by the way, if you don't own that book, it's one you want. It is absolutely a bestseller, now and forever. I'm claiming it. So we began with the thing itself, God, all that is, Spirit, call whatever you'd like to. The way it works through love and law. What it does, it operates through all of itself, and therefore what it does is operate through each one of us as a law for goodness. It is eternal and it is infinite. And today we look at how to use it. How to use it. So we're going to talk about this idea in several ways. We're going to begin the service talking about it from the idea of a personal perception, an individualized expression, using it, using God, using the law to operate our lives. And yet at the same time, we realize that whatever we are knowing for ourselves, we are knowing for the world. It's a big responsibility, and it's actually an awesome responsibility, I believe. I'm going to begin with a reading that is from Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes used to talk on the radio, and his program was called This Thing Called Life. And it is also a book, This Thing Called Life, another bestseller in my opinion. And this is from back in 1950. It's called How to Solve Your Problems. 1950, so it's 75 years old. And it's absolutely true for each one of us, as well as for the larger body of the world. Did you ever stop to think that the human mind is the only thing you know of that can comprehend the meaning of life? This means that somewhere back in your mind there is a place where you merge with and are one with the mind of God. There is a place in everyone's life where the original thinker, this thing called life, enters and can, if we will permit it to, guide our thoughts and actions to the solution of all our problems. To find this place, to discover this power, and to understand, even in the simplest way, how to consciously unify your mind with it, would be the greatest thing that could happen to you or to anyone else. At first, you may say, this is too big and too good to be true. How is it possible that such an insignificant person as I am could be hooked up with the mind of God, could really call on its power and intelligence for the little things in my life? It does seem like a big proposition, doesn't it? And yet, in doing so simple a thing as turning on an electric light, we are using a universal law that flows through our desire. Every advance in science is a recognition of this fact. Why should it seem any more strange to think that you are one with the mind of God than it is to know that you live and move and have your being in a gravitational force that holds everything in place? You are not that force. but you do use it. The mind of God is the only mind there is. And because this thing called life has entered into us, we are all using the mind of God, whether we know it or not. This is why Moses said that the word is in our own mouth. This is something to think about, don't you think? And I happen to know someone who thinks a lot. I know someone who ponders and sits for hours and looks so peaceful as he ponders. And so I absolutely think that this person, Reverend David, might have something to say.
Well, I think I might.
No.
So I'll try to paraphrase it in my words, I guess. Universal law is constantly working in our lives, whether we know it or are aware of it or not. In fact, we are using it constantly, whether we know it or not. The key is to use the law continuously, habitually, and naturally, and consciously to fulfill our deepest wishes and desires. I have developed a habit, as well most of us have developed habits, but I've developed a habit of reaching around the corner whenever I enter a room to try to find the light switch, and then I reach around again to turn it off when I leave. I have developed a habit of locking the front door when I leave, to the point where I sometimes find myself locked out when I go to get the mail or take out the garbage or whatever. I haven't worn a watch for many years, yet I frequently look at my wrist when I wonder what time it is. Little habits that we've created positively and sometimes negatively, but little habits that have kind of really stuck with us throughout life. And on a more positive side, I have developed a habit of thinking predominantly positive thoughts. I challenge myself to think positive thoughts. And when I feel some negativity creeping in, I try to be aware of it and catch it immediately and think positive thoughts. I literally feel discomfort when I watch the news quite often, or listen to whiny people, or hear religious jargon that doesn't align with my beliefs. And my mind goes into overload trying to translate that into positive trains of thought. That can be pretty challenging quite often. And when I feel discomfort, I like to imagine, I like this phrase of, what would God think? You know, that thing of what would Jesus do? I like to think, what would God think in this situation? Or what is the law, and what would a religious scientist turn this around into? Because as Holmes says, as Deborah read, the mind of God is the only mind there is, and because this thing called life has entered into us, we are using the mind of God, whether we know it or not. But are we actually using it consciously? Are we consciously using it for our benefit? Holmes says, to discover the power and to understand, even in the simplest way, how to consciously unify your mind with it would be the greatest thing that could happen to you or to anyone else. This is something to constantly, consciously think about, don't you think?
So we're going to go around asking each other, don't you think, this week, right?
I was thinking about that when I read it too, and I was thinking, are you thinking about this? Or what was I thinking? And so on, don't you think?
Yeah. So Ernest Holmes provides for us in this reading guidance on how to solve our problems, or I'm going to paraphrase his words, and I'm going to say our apparent problems, by connecting with the divine mind. He explains that within each person is a place where they merge with and are one with that magnificent mind of God. And to consciously connect intentionally with this power would allow us to understand how to solve any problem. Perhaps you even got some aha moments in the meditation today with, who am I? What am I? Holmes likens connecting to the divine mind to accepting natural laws in his writing, like breathing air or living within gravity. He encourages us to accept the divine mind is within each one of us and that all things are possible through this. He tells us that the key is learning to control thinking in a way that allows divine guidance to flow through and solve the problem. Now, for me, those are pretty comforting words. If I control my own thinking enough to create myself as a vessel of the divine powers, the divine love, the divine abundant good, the divine right direction, that divine guidance will flow through and solve any problems. Sometimes maybe we notice that we thought we had what we were calling a challenge and suddenly we no longer had it. Something miraculously happened. Or apparently miraculous. It's not really. It's everyday living. So there's a wonderful story that exemplifies this, and I want us to remember that right now, although we know that there's only one, and so it's all that is, we are talking about from our personal viewpoint, how we personally, individually think into this invisible substance called God or divine intelligence that is creative, and we are creating within it. The story is about a monk who decides to meditate, but he wants to be all alone. So he takes a boat away from the monastery out on a lake, and he goes out into the middle. He closes his eyes and he begins to meditate. And he is just in splendor. He's been there for a couple hours when he feels the blow of another boat against his. And with his eyes still closed, he feels his anger rising. He has shifted his thinking, and he is ready to shout at the person who has driven their boat right into his boat. How could someone do such a thing? They've disturbed his meditation. However, when he opens his eyes, he sees that the boat is empty. The boat is empty. And it's floating in the middle of the lake. And it is in that moment that he achieves self-realization. Because in that moment he understands that the anger is inside himself. The thought of someone interrupting his meditation has instantly pushed the button within him to orchestrate anger. And his response, or reaction, I should say, to it. And could he have a different thought? Absolutely. So what he says is that from then on, whenever he meets someone who irritates or pushes that button, I like to say, he remembers the other person is just an empty boat. The things that trigger our feelings are empty boats. Now, might they sometimes, if they keep coming up, be something that we might want to take a look at and do some work around? Absolutely. We live in this human body of existence, form. So sure, we might want to so we can desensitize or dissolve some of that cellular memory, especially if it's something like anger. But the key, once again, is learning to control our thinking in a way that allows the divine guidance to flow through us and resolve or solve our problems. Sometime back, I read a quote, I don't know who it's from, but it's be like a tree, stay grounded, Connect with your roots, turn over a new leaf, bend before you break, enjoy your natural beauty, and keep growing. Now, when I shared it, I never let go of it. I kept thinking about it and thinking about it, and I thought, wow, you can go so much deeper than just reading that, just thinking about it. And it'd make a great reflection, so some of you might want to do what I'm about to do. So the first one is stay grounded. David's talked last week about universal intelligence, using UI instead of AI. Universal intelligence. That's exactly what we're talking about here today. Our universal intelligence allows, or we allow it to flow through us. So how? How do we stay grounded by allowing this to flow through us? Some of the possible ways. We ground ourselves in spiritual principles. Daily, hourly, whatever it is that we are needing or creating a habit of, praying, entering into rituals that are meaningful for us, treatment, meditation, silence, self-care is a big one. One of the greatest ways to pray is to take a walk on the beach, or to sit in the sunshine, or to do whatever in nature restores your soul, that keeps you grounded in knowing you are one as this one. Connect with your roots. I think of the roots that shoot out and keep the plants stable as pillars of good living. So give them a name. Give your roots names. Pillars of good living that serve you through each and every situation. They are ideas that are timeless, and our roots are steeped in ideas for how to live our best life. Ideas such as loving kindness, compassion, all those ideas that were presented in that poem, Everything I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, regarding how to play well in the sandbox and how to excel at doing no harm to self or others. Our roots are the values by which we live, along with the qualities of God life. The next one is turn over a new leaf. Interestingly, leaves are similar on both sides. However, there are variations. We also can make variations in our own lives. But there are times that we make variations to the ways that we live that do not move us toward the good we deserve to be experiencing. We have to remember that it's not done to us. It's not done for us. It is done through us. And we do it, whatever it is that we're doing, by realizing that it is done unto us as we believe. And take the necessary actions, make the necessary choices to live with a new variation of ourselves. Sometimes giving up habits or ideas or ways of seeing ourselves that no longer serve us still give us cause to wait and question whether we should really give it up, or what will it mean. We don't even have to know. Trust that divine intuition within you. Ooh, a big one. Bend before you break. Don't take on more than you can chew. There are certain values to which we will adhere to simply because they are tried and true. But when it feels like it's just too much, let go. Because if it feels like it, it is. We have to become flexible enough to get out of situations and choices that are no longer moving us into experiences of bliss and opulent living. I love the next one. Enjoy your natural beauty. Enjoy your godness. Take the time to love you, to appreciate yourself. So I challenge you this week to write or think about, but more purposefully write, all the blessings that you bring to this life experience. No, it isn't self-centered. It isn't selfish. It isn't righteous or negatively righteous to love yourself and to recognize the good that you bring to your own life, to those in your inner circle, and to those in the greater world. It's important to do so. And if you don't know what blessings you bring to life, ask someone who loves you and write those down. And then ponder those for a good long time until you have owned them, until you have made them your own, until you know them so concretely in your heart. I really don't like that concrete word because that's form. So spiritually in your soul that you are embodying them. And remember, if you don't watch how you think about yourself, you aren't able to give as much as you probably want to and intend to. Find great joy in realizing how magnificent you are at the very core of your being. And then the last one, keep growing. Life will always show up to help us with this one. Our humanness requires that we experience the realm of form, in addition to our subtle body, our soul space. As such, we will continue to attract new opportunities to grow, opportunities to bask in the delight of growing ourselves into a greater possibility of individualized spirit in action.
So I'd like to investigate a little deeper into the idea of using the law at the personal level. And it can be quite a balancing act in determining what we actually do believe, what we want, and then what do we actually believe, and are we actually creating that which we do believe? And of course, this leads me into my favorite Ernest Holmes quote, and I look forward to the time of the year when I get to say it again. It's a reference to how we actually use the law. Ernest Holmes says, if we believe that it will not work, it really works by appearing to not work. When we believe that it cannot and will not, then according to the principle, it does not. But when it does not, it still does. Only it does according to our belief that it will not. So what do you believe? Here's the tricky thing. The law responds as if you know what you're doing. The law responds as if you know what you want. But do you really know what you're doing? And do you really know what you want? If you're not receiving the desired outcomes in life, maybe you just think you know what you want. Maybe what you really need is some personal clarity, some personnel or reorganization of your belief systems. Find what resonates with us and find how that happy middle ground that really determines what it is that I believe and what it really is that I want. And I spent some time pondering on this week, as I quite often do, and I was asking myself, where do I find myself on a spectrum of possibilities in a particular topic or situation? And the words, for some reason, that kept popping into my head all started with ST. I thought, well, that's kind of odd. And so I said, well, I'll go with it. Are you taking a stand or are you stuck? Are you steady or are you stagnant? Are you stylish or are you stuffy? Are you strong or are you stressed? Are you stable or are you static and stiff? Are you sturdy and strict or are you just stubborn? And the one I liked the most was, are you still or are you stale? Most of us want to be studied and not stupid. Most of us don't want to be stalled, starving, sterile, strange, stodgy, stingy, and particularly stinky. So, what do you want to be? And do you really know? And between all those ST words are a lot of other possibilities that maybe don't start with the letters ST. If we get stuck in the ST words, sometimes we will not look at the other possibilities. I'm often challenged about what I want for dinner or which of the 31 flavors of ice cream, not alone the overall trajectory of my life. To clearly define what we want in life, we have to clearly balance all the infinite possibilities and find the comfort zone in the myriad spectrums. And that comfort zone, or that happy middle ground, is very likely what you really want in life.
Absolutely. So, I said we're moving from the personal into the race consciousness, but I want us to also realize that and remember that in Science of Mind we believe in oneness. We believe in the allness of spirit. And we believe in a race consciousness, that groups hold a race consciousness that is creative. Anything that I of myself think and take action upon is a part of what helps create that race consciousness. So in 1930, Emmett Fox wrote this excerpt, and it's in his book, Historical Destiny of U.S. He was specifically writing about the United States of America. And it is true. But it is also true for each one of us. The ideas held in his writing pertain to us as race consciousness of members of Center for Spiritual Living. They pertain to each of us in our personal one-on-one relationships, our families, our friends, our neighbors, and it pertains to us as a global community. Invaluable words about how to create a race consciousness that aligns with the reality of life and truth. And he states within his writing, the one problem as he sees it, or one of the problems, that can create what appears to be separation. And we know there is no separation in God. He wrote this: the only danger that can ever threaten her, the United States, is that of grave division among her own people. The only real peril that can ever threaten the United States is that one section of the American people should quarrel so bitterly with another section as to make them forget the cause of national unity, and so precipitate an internal conflict. Then indeed, should that happen, the house divided against itself might be made to fall, but in no other way. Such a danger cannot arise as long as the American people are careful never to allow party split to become so embittered that the destruction of their political enemies seems to be more important than the safety of their country. However strongly devoted you may be to any particular cause, however strongly opposed you may be to some other cause, the vital thing to remember is that any cause, however good it may be in itself, is secondary to the importance of the supreme causes or cause of national unity. Now I give that treatment, that prayer on behalf of our country, but I also want us to recognize that it's in all of life. As life is one, it is true. Those words are true of my marriage. I can see a separation so far expanding that I can create a divorce, a separation. We can see it in our families. We can see it in our communities, in our neighborhoods. And each one of us gets to stand strong with how we use it, how we use God to know this unity, to know this oneness. And so for ourselves personally, I invite you to pick up those pieces of paper once again. This will be the last time that we read it in race consciousness together. But please, bring it home, read it, and know that we're all right there with you in heart.
You should, some of us may have 4 of these by now.
Yeah.
You can put them in different places in your house.
I shall keep the promise that I have made to myself. I shall never again tell myself that I am poor, sick, weak, or unhappy. I shall not lie to myself anymore, but shall daily speak the truth to my inner soul, telling it that it is wonderful and marvelous, that it is one with the great cause of all life, truth, power, and action. I shall whisper these things into my soul until it breaks forth into songs of joy with the realization of its limitless possibilities. Thank you, Ernest Holmes. And so it is.